Hi, I'm Kamila Stankiewicz and I'm an illustrator from Poland. I love to drawing and painting. I use various techniques, both traditional and digital. One of my favorite techniques is watercolor. It is quite difficult but very satisfying, and other paint can give such a light and delicate colors to your illustrations. Fascinated by it, I was looking for digital software and brushes which can simulate a similar effect. I tried various software with quite good results, but I was still unsatisfied until I found Rebelle a few years ago and fell in love with it completely. Take a look why. Can you see how the paint is spreading over the sheet? It is just amazing and looks so natural and real, and I just knew I have to have it. So in such a way I'm with Rebelle in science almost the beginning, and I could observe a huge progress which it achieved. Let me take you for a quick walk through the main tools and settings of Rebelle which I use the more often. The first choice you will have to make is choosing the sheet. It isn't just plain white canvas which we know from most of the drawing software. You can choose from several textures and tints. The texture will be visible under such medium as watercolor or thin layers of acrylics, or under soft pastels. It is the canvas texture which makes drawing and painting so traditional looking. At the beginning, the stars on the scene, brushes. You can choose from 8 types of brushes simulating traditional media. You can also adjust the parameters of it to your own needs, which gives you even more control over it and allows achieving various effects using still the same tool. My number one is of course watercolor brush, because watching it in use is a real magic. You can set size, pressure, a lot of paint and an amount of water on the brush. If you add a lot of water, it is a great chance that you will have a lot of interesting bleeds, but it is more difficult to control in this way. Just like with real watercolors, but with all advantages of software like less Ctrl-Z, layers, less blending modes, free transform and very interesting tilt window. But we'll get back to this further because the acrylic brush is waiting in the queue. Again, like with real paints, acrylics are more vivid and opaque than watercolor. You can control it more easily. In separate brush creator window you can set other values and customize all brushes according to your needs. So you can make acrylics more watercolor-like by adding more water to the brush, or even set impasto effects similar to oils. Pastel brush is second of my favorites. It has really great grainy texture and again looks so believable and natural. It is also much more easy to handle than watercolor or acrylic brush, so if you don't feel comfortable with them yet, give pastel brush a try. The next one is pencil, and it's also very friendly to use. I use it to define the sketch before painting it with watercolor and for painting details. Just exactly the same as in my painting process with traditional media. The pen is also very interesting, especially when it makes so great bleeds and spreads on wet areas. It is a good moment to stop and tell more about wet and dry. As in traditional process, watercolor, acrylics and pen will behave differently on wet, spreading bleed, making interesting textures or darker edges, than on dry, more predictable and easier to handle. That is why it is worth to know how to use water in Rebelle, but we will get back also for this issue. I don't use marker and airbrush as much as other tools, but airbrush gives more digital feel, which you can know from other graphic software, and marker will be great for lettering or paintings in the more graphic style. We all know what an eraser is for, but having the possibility to set various pressure and shape or texture of it also can give interesting effects, so it is worth to experimenting with these settings. You will probably love stencils, they are very fun to play. You can find the stencils panel in menu window and choose from various shapes or create your own. It is a cool thing that most of the tools have keyboard shortcuts. Most of them are the same as in a majority of graphic programs, as B for last used brush or S for smudge tool. which makes using Rebelle simple and intuitive. Other tools which are very useful in creation process are blend tool and shortcut, perfect for blending colors. I use it a lot with watercolors and pastels when the edges of color are too sharp. Smudge tool as shortcut makes fine smudges and works great with acrylics. Water, W, as I said, it is a very important tool. You can wet specific areas on the sheet to say where the paint should go. It can work a bit like a mask layer in Photoshop. In Photoshop, of course. The paint will spread only in wet areas unless you set a lot of water in brush settings. Then it is possible that drips of paint will flow outside the wet area. If you want to get rid of wet areas, you can use the dry sponge, this shortcut. It removes only water, but not paint. Thanks to that, another layer of paint on dry area won't spread so much as on wet. Crop C is for cropping canvas. There is also buttons for undo and redo, but of course it is much easier to use shortcuts. Blow tool, O, is also a really cool one. It makes great drips and you can give them direction so you have control on it, but it also can make random effects which can surprise you and look so similar to real watercolor. You can find here also color picker and you can pick a color from active layer or from all layer or all layer plus canvas. Transform tool, T, is for resizing and changing all picked elements. That is not gonna happen with traditional media. I use it very often with the selection tool when some part of the sketch is too big or too small or just needs some corrections. Selection tool, M, is for selecting some areas. I use mostly all the time freehand selection to resize elements or copy to another layer. When it comes to layer panel, if you had used any graphic software before, you will feel like home with it. You can add new layers, remove which you don't need anymore, merge them. I love that there are also blending modes available. At the top of layers, there are very important buttons which allow seeing wet areas on the canvas. Stop spreading paint on a sheet at the moment you want to and play it again. It lets the paint spreading further. Wet all layers to achieve wet on wet effects. It makes the pigment spreading way more than on a dry layer. Dry layer makes all layer dry. It is very useful for painting details when we don't want the paint to spread so much on canvas. Fast dry, F shortcut, removes water but painted areas remain wet. It stops paint from spreading and bleeding. I use it almost all the time while my painting process. There are also visual settings which control how the paint and other media behave on the layer. I like to have dark edges and long drips. You can set here also the depth of impasto effect and scale of drips, where to stop by and playing with it a bit. Color panel is obvious and easy to use. The tilt window is definitely one of the most important panels when it comes to watercolor painting in Rebelle. That is the way you tell where the paint and water should go. The longer blue line is, the more water will spread in a chosen direction. If you leave it inactive, paint will spread in all directions at once according to how much water is on the brush and how wet is the canvas. Navigator panel has also some useful features. Besides zoom in and out, you can also rotate canvas there and mirror the whole image, which is very helpful if you want to see if your painting needs some corrections. And that's all that you need to know to follow my process. Let the painting begin. I am opening a new page and making the texture smaller but still visible. The pastel brush is my favorite tool for sketching. I use big size, the shape isn't very clear and defined yet, and I let my imagination work. I'm defining face details on another layer using the pencil. I will decrease the opacity of the layer later, but it will be still visible under the paint, just like in the traditional watercolor process. The theme of the painting is Slovakian Bride, not only because I love everything that is folk related, and especially folk clothes, but also because creators of Rebelle are from Slovakia. Did you know that? I'm making a quite detailed sketch of floral decoration on the ribbons because I'm going to leave it visible under the paint. I find the colorful ribbons the decoration very interesting to paint. It will be a beautiful frame from bride's face. After finishing the sketch, I'm adding another layer. I'm setting multiply mode to leave the sketch visible under a new layer, and I'm painting on it with the watercolor brush. Just as in traditional process, I use the lightest color first. I will add more details using darker colors in the further process. I'm using tilt window to set the direction of paint spreading and bleeds. I'm pulling the blue line to the bottom to achieve long bleeds on ribbons area. The advantage of using software is that I can always undo bad move, mistake, paint which is spreading too much, check a few ways of coloring the same sketch. If the paint is too vivid, I can change the opacity of the layer, and in the matter of fact, I do it very often to avoid too bold colors, which doesn't serve watercolor style painting much. It is much easier to paint in Rebelle than with real watercolors, where a lot of mistakes can't be undone, so you have to be very careful from beginning to an end. It allows me to feel more free and confident while painting. Of course, the advantage of watercolors is that you are finishing with painting ready to hang on the wall, if everything goes well, of course. Both techniques have own pluses and minuses, and I do not consider them competing with each other. It is good to have an opportunity to use both and to use what we have learned in one to another, and vice versa. I'm adding more details using darker colors. I wish to have bride face framed by darker ribbons to make it stand out more from the painting. What I like in watercolor style the most is bright and delicate colors. That is why I tried not to make whole painting too dark and overworked. I notice very often watercolors look beautiful in a sketch phase, but going too deep into details and dark, bold colors makes whole work losing delicacy and lightness. Because of using light and soft colors, I could allow myself to make the whole picture colorful, and a risk I will end with many colors competing with each other for attention was quite low. And one we can say about folk clothes for sure is that they are colorful. The keyboard shortcuts that I use very often is Ctrl+Z and F for fast drive. In details parts I use the pencil and pen. Sometimes small size pastel brush is also very handy, and it adds more texture to the painting. Again, these are the same tools which I use in traditional process. I'm adding another layer in multiply mode and filling it with mild purple color. It is one of my ways to adding shadows. I remove color from the layer using the eraser, or I paint with bright paint in parts where light should be. Time for the pattern on ribbons. I don't color flowers. I don't want to make illustration too colorful. I am erasing dark color on areas where flowers are. So in this way we have a bright flowery pattern on a darker ribbon. I'm locking transparency of the layer. This causes that I can paint only on an already painted area. I'm adding darker color near erased flowers to make flowers stand out a little more. I'm adding another layer for lighter details. I'm painting reflection on the beads, and also I'm adding bright blue for the pattern using the acrylic brush. The stroke texture of acrylic brush imitates embroidered motif perfectly. I'm adding more and more details to her face. Eye flash, lashes, hair, mouth. I'm painting more details on her head decoration, but not too much to not distract attention from her face, which is the main focus point. I'm playing with background color and textures on another layer below others with a watercolor brush and various shapes of it. I think she needs a blush, so I'm using the watercolor brush with a lot of water and without tilt direction. The paint is spreading and making it rest in textures. I use F shortcut to stop spreading, and I'm placing a blush on her cheeks. In this way I have more control. I am afraid that I'm starting to sound like a control freak. I'm not satisfied with the shape of her face. I used reference photo for the headdress, but not for face, and it takes revenge on me. I'm playing a while with shape of her face and lips. I'm adding new shades on her face, but I'm very careful to keep it not too dark. When I am finally happy with her face, the painting is finished. I think the painting looks very traditional. Actually, some of my artist friends thought that it is a real watercolor, but it was definitely much easier to paint in digital way. There is also plenty of space for experimenting without fear I will mess something up. I hope my process was understandable and you will have so much joy with using Rebelle as I have. Thanks for watching.